Ever wondered why some legacies endure for centuries, while others, seemingly more powerful, just vanish? Not gradually, not quietly, but like they were erased from the pages of history. Empires that once ruled trade, politics, even entire continents, now linger only as whispers, names in a textbook, shadows in an old painting. Today we're peeling back the veil on these vanished dynasties, from the financial titans like the Fuggers to the political powerhouses of the Medicis. We'll reveal the hidden weaknesses, the fatal flaws, and the invisible forces that consign the mightiest to historical obscurity. Join me as we trace the echoes of power past. History loves a rise and fall story. Kings, merchants, and aristocrats who once commanded armies, wealth, or influence now exist mostly as echoes, ghosts whose footsteps we can still trace in architecture, art, and finance. But what fascinates most is not their ascent, glorious though it was, but the abruptness and mystery of their decline. Think of them as giants walking among us, only to vanish into mist. The world they shaped seems eternal at first, yet a sudden tremor, internal betrayal, miscalculation, or an unstoppable external force can topple them. In this journey we won't just skim the surface. We'll delve into dynasties that molded eras, whose names once meant power, prestige, and inevitability, but whose endings were as sudden as they were instructive. From secretive banking empires to storied royal families, the stories we uncover are both cautionary and captivating. No empire falls solely because of outsiders. The seeds of collapse are often sown long before any invader arrives at the gates. Often the first cracks appear from within, hidden beneath the surface, growing slowly and almost imperceptibly. Succession crises and infighting, power can be a poison. When heirs quarrel, alliances fracture, and trust evaporates, the very foundation of a dynasty becomes unstable, threatening everything built over generations. Consider the endless cycles of betrayal, scheming, and secret alliances that riddled noble households, turning kin into rivals and friends into foes. Sometimes family members are the greatest threat, each vying to secure the throne, the treasury, or the title for themselves, even at the cost of unity. The irony is bitter. Those who inherit the empire are often the ones most likely to dismantle it, blinded by ambition or resentment. Economic missteps and overextension. Wealth can be both a shield and a curse. Dynasties like the Fuggers mastered finance, but overconfidence or reckless expansion turns prosperity into peril, and fortune into misfortune. When investments fail, debts mount, and trade networks shift, even the most sophisticated financial machine can crumble, leaving ruin in its wake. Complacency breeds vulnerability, and the very innovation that once ensured dominance can become a trap if unchecked, stifling adaptation and progress. Moral decay and loss of public trust. Empires are held together not only by gold or armies, but by legitimacy and the faith of their people. When rulers indulge in extravagance, injustice, or corruption, their people begin to look elsewhere for guidance, seeking new leaders or new hope. A dynasty may command armies, but without loyalty and respect, their power becomes hollow, a mere shadow of its former glory. And hollow power is fragile, like a palace built on sand, destined to collapse when the storms inevitably come. Internal decay is only part of the story. The fate of empires is shaped not just by what happens within their walls, but by the relentless pressures from the outside world. Even the most robust empire is at the mercy of forces beyond its control, forces that can strike without warning or mercy. Geopolitical shifts and rising rivals. The world is always moving, and the map is never truly settled. Borders redraw, alliances collapse, and ambitious neighbors seize opportunities that once seemed unthinkable. A dynasty may think itself secure, only to be blindsided by the emergence of a cunning rival or a nation whose rise was invisible until it became unstoppable. Technological obsolescence. The sword eventually gives way to the gun, and the old ways are swept aside by innovation. The horse to the locomotive, as new inventions redefine the pace and power of nations. The ledger to digital finance. Those who fail to adapt are left behind in a world that never stops changing. Dynasties that fail to innovate, that cling stubbornly to familiar methods, risk irrelevance and eventual extinction. What once cemented their power can become a relic, and those too slow to adapt vanish in the shadow of progress, their legacies fading into dust. Natural disasters and unforeseen calamities. Sometimes fate is cruelly literal, striking with no warning. Fires, floods, famine, or plague can destabilize even the strongest dynasties, bringing them to their knees almost overnight. A single unforeseen disaster can ripple through political and economic structures, exposing weaknesses that had lain hidden for generations. History remembers the battles and treaties, but nature and fate often deliver the final blow, reminding us that no power is truly permanent. To understand these dynamics fully, let's look at two of history's most intriguing vanished dynasties, the Medici. Once, the Medici family controlled Florence, shaping art, politics, and banking. They commissioned Michelangelo, influenced popes, and dictated European finance. Yet power alone could not shield them from human error. Political intrigue, overreach, and a series of poor financial decisions chipped away at their dominance. By the 18th century, their name remained illustrious, but their influence had dwindled into ceremonial echoes. What survives today is their legacy in culture and art, not their political or financial might. The Fuggers, the ultimate mercantile empire of Renaissance Europe, the Fuggers amassed unimaginable wealth, funding kings and shaping economies, but even the most sophisticated bankers are vulnerable. Changing trade routes, emerging financial models, and mismanaged investments gradually eroded their supremacy. By the 17th century, the Fugger fortune had diminished, and their once feared influence had faded to near invisibility. Their story demonstrates how even empires built on money, an inherently flexible power, are not immune to obsolescence. Patterns and lessons. Look closely, and patterns emerge, subtle yet persistent, woven through the fabric of history. Both dynasties faced internal fractures as ambitions clashed and loyalties shifted within their own ranks. They failed to adapt fully to external changes, unable to anticipate the tides of innovation and shifting alliances, and were at the mercy of shifting geopolitical landscapes where borders and fortunes could change overnight. Yet their unique circumstances, one entwined with politics and art, shaping the very culture of their era, the other with finance and trade, remind us that while the causes of decline may echo across history, the details are always distinct. Each dynasty's end is shaped by a singular mix of decisions, luck, and misfortune. Why study vanished empires, you might wonder? Because their stories speak to our present. Today's powerhouses, whether corporate conglomerates, political coalitions, or tech giants, are not immune to the same forces that felled the Medicis and Fuggers. Internal weaknesses, failure to innovate, or overreach can make dominance fleeting. Even the mightiest can falter when they lose sight of change. The echoes of these dynasties remind us that power is cyclical. Nothing is permanent, no matter how solid it may seem. Legacies endure not because of strength alone, but because of adaptability, foresight, and the willingness to evolve, and the ability to navigate both internal and external turbulence, steering through storms rather than resisting them. For viewers, this reflection offers a dual lens, a historical fascination with the past, and a philosophical prompt for the present, urging us to question our own assumptions about power and legacy. How do we wield influence responsibly, knowing that every action shapes what comes next? How do we recognize the invisible forces shaping our own world, often hidden until it's too late, and perhaps most hauntingly, what in our own lives might vanish if neglected, mismanaged, or simply taken for granted? In a way, history is both warning and mirror, reflecting our choices and their consequences. The grand empires we study today echo with lessons for tomorrow, if only we are willing to listen. And if we listen carefully, we can trace the invisible lines from past vanishments to modern decisions, learning that dominance is never guaranteed, and that vigilance is as important as vision. Every empire, no matter how towering, carries the seeds of its own disappearance, reminding us to cherish, adapt, and never take our place in history for granted. Power is intoxicating, legacy seductive, yet the vanished dynasties teach us that no matter how luminous the reign, shadows will always fall. From the Medici palaces to the Fugger ledgers, the story is the same. Greatness, unchecked by prudence and humility, is fragile. History is littered with such vanishments, and by studying them, we are reminded not only of the inevitability of change, but of the beauty and terror of impermanence itself. So the next time you marvel at a towering figure or a dominant institution, remember, the echoes of empire are patient and history never forgets. Even the mightiest can fade, leaving only whispers behind.